What happened at this local beach shocked everyone in this community. That something like this can happen right where we live, one of the beach visitors stated, confused to arriving news reporters. At first, it seemed like thousands of trash-filled garbage bags washed up on shore out of nowhere. But then the lifeguard decided to take a closer look. Before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The morning started just like any other for the lifeguards on this beach. As the sun rose higher, people began arriving with their towels and umbrellas, ready for a relaxing beach day. But it was not long before the first calls of concern came in from early walkers along the shoreline that day. Lifeguard Captain Alex Monroe was the first to walk over to where people were pointing, and when he saw what the commotion was about, he instantly froze in place. There seemed to be thousands of dark, shiny trash bags drifting up from the water, covering a long stretch of the sandy beach in both directions. The sight was frustrating to everyone who worked at the beach. They could not believe that anyone would dump so much garbage into the ocean. Monroe and his fellow lifeguards exchanged tired looks, shaking their heads as they imagined the long job ahead to clean up every last bag before anyone could swim again. Monroe knelt by the edge of the water and tried to pick up one of the bags. To his surprise, it was much heavier than he expected. The bag weighed at least 40 pounds, which was odd to say the least. After some tugging, he rested it on the sand beside him as he fiddled with the knot. Curious to find out what the bag held, Monroe tugged at the plastic. The knot at the top was secured very tightly, as if the person responsible for these bags didn't want anything to get into the sack that didn't belong there. "What do you think could be in there?" Monroe asked his colleagues. One of the younger lifeguards suggested maybe the bags were filled with old bottles or food waste from a ship. Monroe shook his head, saying he could not hear anything rattling or sloshing coming from inside. He said the bags felt more like they were full of heavy rocks than anything else, and it turned out that Monroe wasn't far off with his estimated guess. As the knot on his bag loosened and the plastic folded to the side, Monroe finally saw its contents. The bag was filled to the brim with spherical, rough-looking rocks about the size of his fist. At least that was what Monroe thought at first. As more bags floated up, the team started to gather them into piles further from the water. The odd weight of each bag made the task slow. Soon they had dozens stacked up, but there were still hundreds drifting closer to shore, bumping against each other in the gentle waves. Monroe's colleagues were already calling the local garbage disposal company. They hoped the professionals could bring trucks and remove all this seemingly useless trash quickly. The team needed to clear the beach fast, both for the tourists and for the wildlife that depended on the area for their home. But something felt off about all of this. While the call went out, Monroe's mind kept turning. Something about the whole scene bothered him. He observed how evenly spaced the bags arrived at the shoreline and how tightly they were tied. He couldn't think of a good reason why anyone would send so many bags of rocks out into the sea like this. The lifeguard on the phone told Monroe that the line was ringing, but Monroe suddenly raised his hand and told his colleague to hang up before the disposal company could answer. He said they needed to wait and take a closer look at what was happening before bringing more people in. Monroe was not sure why, but he felt uneasy. He told the others to tape off the whole area and keep everyone away from the trash bags. He said that nobody should touch them until they understood exactly what they were dealing with. He did not want anyone to get hurt or mess up any evidence. Some of the lifeguards wondered why Monroe was being so careful. At first glance, it looked like normal trash. But Monroe reminded them that things were not always what they seemed. It was their job to protect the public from anything unusual on the beach. Monroe ordered his team to split up. The main crew would stay behind and I'm sure nobody interfered with the bags. He selected 4 trusted team members to take a boat with him and follow the trail of bags into the water to find the source. Their small boat moved easily through the waves as Monroe scanned the horizon. They stayed in contact with the shore crew through walkie-talkies. The farther they traveled, the more Monroe noticed a clear pattern. The bags were forming a deliberate trail, not drifting randomly. This made him more certain the trash had not been dumped by accident. Occasionally, Monroe stopped the boat so they could pull a bag from the water. Each one was filled with heavy, dark rocks, and none of the lifeguards understood why someone would go to so much trouble to dump them. The strangeness of the situation unsettled the younger lifeguards, and Monroe urged everyone to stay cautious. Behind them, the beach was now barely visible, cordoned off with tape while tourists tried to get a better look. The shore crew reported that more bags continued washing up. After heading east for nearly an hour, Monroe spotted a faint shape on the horizon, positioned exactly where the trail seemed to begin. As they approached, the crew whispered theories, trying to understand what they would find. One lifeguard pointed out the oddest detail. A 40-pound bag of rocks should sink instantly, yet these floated. This suggested the rocks might be hollow. Monroe instructed them to open one of the bags. He tapped on the surface of a rock and heard a dull, echoing sound. Using a wrench, he struck it hard enough to crack the shell. Inside was a hollow space containing something that made everyone step back in shock. Monroe quickly closed the bag again, realizing they had stumbled onto something serious. He contacted the beach crew and told them to call the police immediately and tighten the restricted area. The tension on the boat increased as they continued toward the distant shape, which was now clearly a ship. Even from afar, they could see activity on its lower deck. Through binoculars, Monroe spotted a hatch near the waterline where more bags were being dumped. Whoever was on board was deliberately releasing them. The group approached carefully, looking for a blind spot. Monroe guided the boat around the back of the ship, keeping them hidden. Once they found a safe approach, he tied up the face and boat and instructed everyone to prepare to climb aboard. They checked their radios and whispered their plan, knowing silence was essential. The noises from the ship grew louder, shouting, heavy movement, and bags being dragged across metal. Monroe waited until no one was watching, then led the team onto the deck. They moved quickly, keeping to the shadows behind large containers. From this vantage point, they saw workers filling more bags with the same heavy, dark objects that had washed ashore. Monroe and his team realized that everything happening here was part of a much bigger plan than they first imagined. The lifeguards crouched behind a large metal container, watching the workers move quickly across the ship's deck. None of them spoke, aware that getting caught could put them in danger. Monroe whispered for the team to stay low and avoid sudden movements. From their hiding spot, they saw a tall man with a thick mustache emerge from the captain's hut. He barked orders and inspected the bags, clearly the one in charge. Monroe signaled that he was likely their main suspect. But before they could observe further, Monroe's walkie-talkie crackled loudly as the shore team tried to reach him. He had forgotten to turn down the volume, an unfortunate mistake. Instantly, the mustached man turned toward their hiding spot and shouted for his workers to investigate. Several men approached, searching for the source of the noise. Monroe motioned quickly for his team to move, and they slipped around the containers just in time. They stayed silent until the workers gave up and returned to their tasks. Monroe led his team along the edge of the ship to a quieter corner. He finally switched the radio back on at the lowest volume, whispering urgently to the shore crew. They reported that a garbage disposal company had arrived, insisting they were there to clean the beach even though nobody had called them. Their persistence made Monroe increasingly suspicious. He instructed the beach crew to keep everyone away from the bags, certain these workers were not who they claimed to be. With tension running high, Monroe gathered his team and reminded them to trust their instincts. Then, seeing the mustached man away from the hut, he signaled for the group to move. They slipped up the staircase and into the captain's hut, finding a table covered in papers, maps, and diagrams. Everything pointed to a covert operation. Monroe recognized the Spanish writing and quickly pieced together the meaning. The papers listed routes, coded instructions, names, and photographs. The crew was Colombian, and their operation involved transporting narcotics. The rocks inside the trash bags were actually hollow shells filled with drugs. The design explained their unusual weight and buoyancy. They were meant to float to shore. Monroe revealed the cracked sphere from earlier, showing the carefully constructed shell and the smaller packets hidden inside. The team finally understood the scale of what they had uncovered. The smugglers used ocean currents to deliver the disguised bags to shore, where their own people posing as a garbage disposal company would retrieve them without suspicion. The documents also listed multiple cities targeted for similar drops. Monroe realized how close the operation had come to succeeding. He contacted the shore team again, instructing them to let police listen in as he explained everything. He ordered immediate arrests of the fake garbage workers and recommended sending officers to the main garbage dump to intercept additional accomplices. He then shared the ship's exact location. Within an hour, police boats surrounded the vessel. Officers boarded, arrested everyone, and searched for more evidence. Monroe and his team stood back, watching as the mustached leader was taken away, furious that his plan had failed. On land, the fake garbage workers were also detained. The police thanked the lifeguards for their caution and bravery. Monroe's decision to trust his instincts had prevented the smugglers from recovering the hidden cargo. Afterward, the team stepped from their hiding place and explained everything to the officers. Over the following days, investigators uncovered more details at the ship and at the garbage facility, revealing just how elaborate the operation truly was. When the news broke, the public was shocked by how close the drugs had come to reaching their community. Parents thanked Monroe and his crew, and city leaders praised their careful attention. The mustached leader and his workers received long prison sentences, the fake company was shut down, and new safety measures were established to protect the beaches. Tourists soon returned, reassured that the threat was gone. Monroe and his crew resumed their normal duties, knowing the outcome could have been far worse without their vigilance. In the weeks that followed, Monroe thought back to the first moment he saw the bags. He was proud of his team for trusting him and grateful for their calm under pressure. He knew lifeguards had to be prepared for anything, and he would never forget the day the trash bags washed up on shore.